fed up eating the same boring chicken dishes? This week I'll show you how to make the quickest and tastiest chicken ever. Boneless, skinless chicken breasts are often the go-to protein when it comes to putting dinner on the table quickly. The problem is if they're not cooked properly, they can get really dry. I'm going to show you a super simple technique for cooking chicken that's quick and tasty and which guarantees a tender and juicy result. What we're going to do is season the chicken with a little salt and pepper, brown it on one side, then we're going to flip it over, add some liquid and seasonings, and then cover the pan to let the chicken steam in its own juices. That's it. So I'm going to start by just giving a little salt and pepper sprinkle to my chicken breasts. If you're on a low salt diet, you can skip the salt part if you want to. Just a few twists. You know, if you don't have a pepper grinder at home, I would suggest you get one. Fresh pepper tastes so great. And I've already got my pan heated up, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the oil after the pan is hot. And the reason I do that is because when your pan is hot, you can use much less oil because it's going to spread very quickly with the heat. This is actually a non-stick pan, so I probably didn't have to use it at all, but we're going to put just a little bit of oil in there for flavor. It's nice and hot, and I'm just going to take this chicken and take the seasoned side, and I'm just going to place it right in that skillet. You can hear it sizzling. And I'm just going to put it in there for a few minutes until it gets brown. Once it gets brown on one side, we're going to flip it over and finish cooking. So my chicken's nice and brown on one side. So I'm going to flip it over. Look how pretty that is. This looks great. So I'm just going to flip it over, and I'm going to do this one really, really simply. I'm just going to sprinkle it with a little dried tarragon. I happen to like tarragon. It's good with chicken. It's kind of light, kind of sweet. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a little bit of orange juice to my pan. And you can see it's bubbling up. I'm going to put my cover on, and I'm going to turn the heat down a little bit. It smells really good. And one of the things I want you to notice is that the steam is collecting on the lid and it's dripping back down onto the chicken. And that's really the secret to this recipe for keeping the chicken moist. Because if you put your chicken in the broiler or you do it on the grill, all that moisture is just evaporating away and it's just making your chicken dry. So when this is done, we're going to let this cook for a little bit, and then when this is done, you're going to see how tender and juicy it really is. While the chicken's cooking, and the length of time is going to depend on how thick your chicken breasts are, but figure 10 to 15 minutes or so, let's talk about some of the ways you can vary this dish because there's almost an endless variety. As far as seasonings, you can use any herb you like. I use tarragon, but you can try basil, any herb that tastes good to you. Spices, you can use ginger, you can use garlic, you can use onions or onion powder, you can try curry powder. And then with your liquids, you've got a huge range too. So you can try wine. White wine or red wine works really well. Most of the alcohol cooks out if you're concerned about that. You can use broth. You can use chicken broth or vegetable broth if you want. Fruit juices work really well. I used orange juice. You can use lemon juice. You can use lime juice. I've done it with pomegranate, which makes a really delicious kind of a sweet glaze on the chicken. You can also use different vinegars. You can try balsamic vinegar, which gets kind of thick and syrupy, or rice wine vinegar, which is a little bit lighter. The other thing you can do is if you're going to use these chicken breasts in other dishes, let's say you're going to put it into a salad and you don't want a lot of seasoning, you can just cook it with a little water or broth, and then you can add the seasonings later when you're finishing up your dish. Some good combos that I like: lime juice with cumin, garlic powder, and chili powder gives kind of a Southwest flavor. I use this sweet herb like tarragon. I did mine with orange juice, but it's really good with balsamic vinegar because that's kind of sweet as well. You can also try some ground ginger and then glaze it with a little bit of rice wine vinegar and a little bit of soy sauce. You can also check out the discovergoodnutrition.com website because I've posted a detailed recipe for the chicken and some other recipe suggestions. Now that my chicken is cooked all the way through, this is the last step, but this is the really important part. So I'm going to take the lid off, and I'm going to take the chicken pieces out for a minute. I want you to notice too that I'm putting these on a clean plate. One of the things you want to be really careful when you're cooking poultry or cooking fish is that you don't do what they call cross-contamination. You don't want to put it back on the cutting board where you had the raw chicken. I'm going to just turn the heat back up a little bit, And I'm for just a minute, I'm going to stir what's left of these pan juices just to let it cook down just a tiny bit. It's going to thicken and evaporate just enough so that I'm going to be able to glaze the chicken with it. And that's pretty good, right about there. I'm only left with a couple of tablespoons of liquid in my pan, but believe me, it's really, really flavorful. So I'm just going to turn this off. And then the last step, I'm going to just put my chicken back in here for a minute. And I'm going to just kind of flip it over and just coat it a little bit with this delicious, delicious glaze. It's so pretty. And that is it. So I'm going to put it on my plate over here. And if you want, if you've got a little extra in the pan, you can pour the little bit of extra liquid right on top, like that. And if you want to get really fancy, you can put a little parsley on it, which always makes it look like it came from a restaurant. But one thing I also want to do is I just want to cut into it because I want to show you just really how nicely cooked this is and how juicy it is, and hopefully you'll be able to see. It's just perfectly cooked all the way through, and there's just some really nice liquid juice that's coming out of there. So that means that my chicken is really, really tender and it's just not dry at all. So I hope you get inspired to try this technique. Remember, it's really simple. Brown it, flip it, season it, add a little liquid, cover, and you're done. And you can get dinner on the table in 10 minutes.